fifth and last panel of our indicator is the panel dedicated to the search of point B, based on denying and habitual ranges. We can also search for point C, the end of the correction, if we know the points A, B, and D. We search for these sizes, based on the sizes of the previous impulses. To do this, we have to find the impulses with our panel for measuring denying and habitual ranges. If we look for the magnitude of the upward trend, the denying range will be the downward one. Instead, all bullish impulses will be the habitual ranges. For example, if we look for the magnitude of this impulse, bullish impulse, other bullish impulses will be the habitual ranges. Instead, the size of the bearish impulse will be called the denying range. Now, let us measure correctly the magnitudes of the denying and habitual ranges. 3 habitual ranges, and we find that they all have similar magnitudes. The denying range is also the same size. This is very important information for us. Impulses, in this case, are the same size. Now let's see if the next impulse behaved as we expected. Let's pretend that the right side of the chart is not there yet. We can make a hypothesis that it is a bullish impulse after the break of the Kinko line. Here, with the help comes our fifth panel of the indicator, with which we can make measurements, and the hypothesis, how far the price will go, if this really is a bullish impulse. Measuring from the minimum to the first closed candles above the Kinko line, the indicator shows us the place where the price could reach. As we can see, the price with an accuracy has reached the height of the D, R1 and H, R2 impulse size. As we see, it is a very precise and very useful tool. When the price reaches point B and starts to change direction, we can ask ourselves how far the correction will go. To do this calculation correctly, we need 2 things. The first is the end of the impulse. The second, hypothetical point D. That is, how far the price could go after the correction. As in this example, we have a point A, B, and D, and based on these 3 points we try to figure out where point C is. Where do we get point D from? For example, we know that with the Ichimoku span line of the upper time frames, like the weekly and monthly candles, we can find valid supports and resistances. With the violent changes of direction of the Ichimoku span line, we can find resistances and supports. In this case, on the weekly chart, it is evident that the Ichimoku span line has changed direction, and we can mark it as a probable resistance. We mark this place with a horizontal line to see in the future how the price will react to this line. These levels are important for this pair. Let's go back to daily time frame. First thing we can notice is that the price actually bounced perfectly from the horizontal line. Now, to better see the price behavior, we delete the Ichimoku indicator. We have point A and B, hypothetical point D, where the price could arrive, and based on these 3 elements we look for the magnitude of the correction. It means point C, by clicking on the first button of the 3rd line of the 5th panel, a new element will appear on the chart. We move this element to the hypothetical point D, click twice, and as a result we get the various levels where the correction can finish. These levels are calculated according to Hosoda's target theory. In this case, the level where the price could change direction was very precise. These calculations are purely hypothetical, but they help as reference points to understand if we are making a certain scenario. When we see that the price reacts precisely on this level, the probability that the price will reach point D increases. This part of the strategy is based on denying and habitual ranges. Once we have correctly identified the denying and habitual ranges, we can determine the point where the price can arrive with a new impulse. Once we find a hypothetical D point, we can also determine the size of the correction. Once the analyses have been carried out, we can also change some things from an aesthetic point of view. The first button on the first line allows us to hide all the calculations we made. It only takes 2 clicks to make all the calculations appear again. The second button allows us to make measurements with the extremes of candles on with the closures of the candles. Attention! To make the measurements with the closures, also the denying and habitual ranges must be made on the closures of the candles. The third button on the first line hides the calculations of the denying and habitual ranges. The fifth button allows us to change the thickness of line A, B. Mechanism is the same as in the previous panels, just change the number on the button, for example from 1 to 4, and we see immediately that the thickness of this line becomes much more robust. The last button of the first line allows us to hide all the measurements related to the search for point C. That is the search for the size of the correction. With a yes or no button, we can make the measurements appear or disappear. The logic of the measurements, in this case, is as follows. Having the denying and habitual ranges available, we can with a good probability find the point up to where the price of the new impulse should reach. When the price reaches point B, and the direction of the price trend changes, with a hypothetical, possible point D, we can hypothesize how far the correction should go. If we know the theory of targets and waves, we can also do these calculations. As far as the fifth panel is concerned, that's it. Thank you for your attention.